Do you smell it? It's football time, baby. Today marks the day that college football returns to grace the world. Now, I did not give myself enough time, nearly enough time, to get all of the videos out that I wanted to. Now, since it's technically week zero, by the way, why the hell was Ireland all of a sudden the host of week zero college football? They had Georgia Tech, Florida State last year, and now they have Kansas State and Iowa State. So don't know what's up with that, but that should be a really good game, by the way. But since it's week zero, I'll have like another week afterwards to kind of get out my next video or two that I want to make. But with that being said, we are here and we will be discussing my top 30 teams. I'm not going to be able to go as in depth as I kind of want to, but also, to be honest, I don't know why. It felt more difficult than most years to kind of evaluate and look at a lot of these teams. I feel like the transfer portal has kind of made it to a point where the teams are so different year in and year out. You really can hardly take anything from previous seasons. It's really just about coaching staffs. If a team has a returning quarterback, that's a massive uh, boost in their benefit. But it's like in terms of just overall roster turnover, so many of these teams are like just unrecognizable from even last year. So we're going to get into it. And quite frankly, I am not confident at all. Like even in the top 10, like uh, I just think it's going to be a crazy season and be prepared for a lot of change in this rank. When I look back on this a year from now on this individual ranking, I am going to be shocked. So let's get right into it. As always, thank you for watching my top 30 teams. So we're going to go upwards to downwards here. So starting with my number one team is where I have the Texas Longhorns. I did an in-depth team spotlight for them. Pretty much, I have a lot of confidence in Steve Sarkisian and the amount of weapons he can consistently produce. It feels like every year they lose their entire NFL draft, and still, they produce a high-powered offense. But last year, the story with Texas was their incredible defense. Now they do lose a couple studs from that unit, but I do think they will be a very good defense going into next season. And also, a thing to point out: this ranking has nothing to do with how good I think the team will finish next year. So a team's schedule has no parts in this ranking whatsoever. It's strictly just based on who I would pick to win a game on a neutral site. So Texas at number one for all the reasons I just named, and also having Arch Manning returning is a massive factor in this here. So Texas as my number one team in the country, they are also my pick to win the national championship. Now, I think they will be playing the Clemson Tigers in said national championship game. They kind of shocked me last year. You know, they lost to Georgia in week one, and I mean, everybody wrote them off pretty much, but then Cade Klubnik and the team overall went on an absolute tear. Cade Klubnik has solidified himself, in my opinion, as the best quarterback in the country. And they bring back almost all of his pass catching weapons. His top three receivers from last year come back. The defense in Clemson, in terms of the ACC, it's proven to be a dominant force and keeps them in just about every single game. My problem with them is that they lose Will Shipley and Phil Maffa back to back years, and there's a massive question mark over that position. I don't know who's going to fill in into that role, but quite frankly, now that Cade Klubnik has kind of emerged, I don't even know if they need a Phil Maffa or Will Shipley. It would really help. I mean, I'd probably pick them to win it all if they had one of those two guys, but I think they can lean more into a explosive, dynamic pass attack now that Cade Klubnik has rised to the top of the sport. Number three is where I have Penn State. I also made a team spotlight on this team. I think Penn State is going to look really, really good in the regular season. The only tough games they play are against Oregon and Ohio State. I think they'll pretty much dominate everybody else unless they play like they did last year, in which they had extremely embarrassingly close games against the likes of Bowling Green, Minnesota, and USC. But Nick Singleton, Kayshawn Allen make up probably the best backfield in the country. Their defense has been elite the last 2 years. They probably will be elite yet again. But the overall question, the only question regarding Penn State is, can they win a big game? Just one. That's all I'm asking for. They have not won a big game this decade. So, yeah, we'll see if that ever happens. Number four, this is where I have Ohio State at. So, the way I pretty much viewed it, actually, Interesting point here. So if you go back, you look at my top three, a common trend you'll find is that all three of these teams have a experienced, well, they all have a quarterback returning that they feel really good about. Moving on here, any team that has a new quarterback, unless they got that guy via the transfer portal and we know what they are and who they like look like, any new quarterback, I am just going to assume that they will be average. So we'll explain what that means for each of these teams. Ohio State getting a new quarterback and them being average is not really that much of a downgrade from Will Howard. And what I mean by that is in the regular season, Will Howard was not much of a difference maker. He was kind of just a game manager. They won in spite of him at times. They won because of him at times. And especially in the big games in the regular season against Penn State, Oregon, he was not that much of a factor. And listen, when you have guys like Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate on the outside, they're going to make whoever the quarterback is look really good at times. And with the Ryan Day system, I have no doubt that Ohio State will be a good offense. But I mean, listen, winning the national championship and also taking into account the transfer portal, it is almost impossible to replace the amount of talent you need to go back to back. So it's just you give them all the respect in the world and listen. Whoever wins the Ohio State Texas game in week 1 will be my number 1 team until they lose a game. So obviously they could shut all of my concerns up by just beating Texas in week 1. Now, my other question though is that it felt like last year's defense especially had so many stars all over the place between Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, Cody Simon, Denzel Burke. They still get guys like Caleb Downs to return, uh, Davison Igbinosun, but it's just who are the new guys, specifically in the front seven, who are going to be difference makers for the Ohio State defense. That's a concern that I have for them. Number 5 is where I have Notre Dame. This is interesting because usually I would not be I wouldn't be very high on Notre Dame usually, but they did prove a lot of people wrong last year. They beat Georgia, they beat Penn State, and that was after losing to NIU in like week 2 or whatever it was. So very impressive for Notre Dame last year. They either had the second or third best season in all of college football last year, depending on who you ask. I would say third because Oregon, I think, had the second best season. But with that being said, I actually think it's very possible that Notre Dame gets better offensively here with their new starting quarterback because Riley Leonard, he did some things really well. He was a really tough guy. He was a hard-nosed runner. He picked up those short yardage plays, but I think he kind of held them back at times in the pass game. I think the best football he played was in the second half of the national championship game when it was pretty much over and they were just airing it out. So I think for the first time, maybe in a long time, Notre Dame could have a real advanced pass game here. And even if they don't, Jeremiah Love is on everybody's list as like a short list of a top, 10 Heisman candidates. So I think they're going to be really good. They have a proven track record on defense these last few years. They've been borderline dominant defensively. And if they can put together a competent offense to go alongside that, we might see Notre Dame win 25 plus games in a 2-year stretch, which would be insane for them. Number 6 is where I have Alabama. Alabama, certainly. People are all over the place. And listen, if you had Alabama at like 13 or 14, I couldn't even blame you. I mean, they had their worst season in who knows how, probably decades, quite frankly. And there's not a lot of you would pretty much have to be an Alabama fan to be optimistic about them in terms of being like a national championship contender, things like that. And them getting a new quarterback, I do think it's going to be a downgrade. I think people are way too critical of Jalen Milroe last year, but they should, theoretically be an improved passing offense. Ryan Williams comes back. Jeremy Bernard comes back. They bring in the guy from Miami, Isaiah Horton. They should have a much more explosive passing game. The run game definitely concerns me because I think what people are really going to miss Jalen Milroe is the explosive breakaway runs that he provided you. Not having those, I think, are going to make Alabama fans kind of question, dang, where's all the running backs we used to be known for? And defensively, they could be the best defense in the SEC. It's very possible. So I think there's a lot of things going for Alabama here, and I do think 9-4 is going to absolutely be the floor in terms of Kalen DeBoer's coaching tenure here for the Crimson Tide. Number 7 is where I have Georgia. And by the way, Starting with Alabama, that's where this list pretty much goes off the rail. You could switch pretty much anything after this in order, and I really couldn't push back because I have no confidence in anybody underneath Notre Dame, quite frankly. Number 7 is where I have Georgia. It's a rebuild year, in my opinion. It's crazy that in a rebuild year, they're still my number 7 team in the country, but it's just I have not seen enough of really anybody. I mean, they brought in a couple transfer portal guys. They brought in a running back from Illinois, a wide receiver from USC, Zachariah Branch. It's going to look like a really different team, and it kind of needs to offensively. They had the most drops in the country. It was an embarrassing wide receiver core. Quite frankly, honestly, I wouldn't, if I was a Georgia fan, I would not want a single receiver from last year's team back on this. It was embarrassing. And 2 of those guys went to the NFL, I believe. So, yeah, it was not good in terms of the pass catchers for Georgia last year. They need a bit of an overhaul. I think Travis Etienne, the transfer from Illinois, could put together a pretty good run game. Add into that Gunnar Stockton, who should be a running threat as well. That maybe that's the Georgia we're going to see, more of a grinded out, control the lines of scrimmage. But they also lost several offensive linemen, so it's just I really don't see any path for Georgia to be dominant this year. I expect them to lose multiple games, and it's really tough for me to put them any higher than number 7, quite frankly. Number 8 is where I have LSU. Also, real quick to go back to Georgia, defensively, it's just they lose so many, and it's not just the amount they lose; it's the quality. Every year, Georgia loses their 2 or 3 best players on defense, and it's just they don't have the plethora of stars like waiting in the second and third string on the depth chart to replace those guys anymore. So it's just the erosion is taking place and they need a rebuild year. They cannot consistently be a national championship contender year in and year out like they've been for the last 4 or 5 years. So they took a step back, in my opinion, this year. Number 8 is where I have LSU. Quite frankly, I just expect, I got to stop saying quite frankly, but honestly, I expect LSU to be one of, if not the best offenses in the country. Very similar to what they were in 2023, except I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to do it a lot more with his arm, whereas Jaden Daniels did it a lot with his legs. Their receivers are loaded. I really like the running back who's coming back. I believe his name is Caden Durham, if I'm not mistaken. Harold Perkins comes back. Hopefully, that could make the defense a little bit better. They took a step in the right direction. Obviously, they were terrible in 2023. I think they got better 2024. You would hope now that the trajectory there would line up to them being a good defense in 2025, but who knows as far as that's concerned. But they did also lose both of their starting offensive tackles. And listen, when you have a pocket passer quarterback and you're going to try and throw the ball probably 500 plus times this season, you would like to have a bit more confidence in your offensive tackles than what LSU has right now. So they certainly have their areas of concern, but I do expect LSU to win a couple of massive games this upcoming season. Now, next up, I got Oregon at number 9. I mentioned it earlier. I think they had the second best season in the country last year outside of Ohio State. They beat the national champions. They won the conference championship, the Big Ten. They were 13-0, but they ran into the buzzsaw that was Ohio State. So coming back now, they lose their quarterback. They lose. Who did they lose? They lose their running back, Jordan James. They lose their wide receiver, Tez Johnson. They lose their other top receiver, Evan Stewart. Unfortunately, I believe he tore his ACL in the offseason, so he won't even play next year. So it's going to look very different offensively. They lose their tight end, Terrence Ferguson. It's pretty much a brand new offense. They lose a couple offensive linemen. The more I think about it, the more players I realize that they lost. They brought in a running back, Makai Hughes. That is a extremely under the radar pickup. I think he's going to have a massive season at Oregon. I think he is going to be their most important offensive player next year. They're going to have to lean on him heavily. And listen, I like the fact that Dante Moore took a year to kind of sit and learn the system in 2024 rather. I'm not like I have no idea what he's going to look like next year. Just based off the track record of Dan Lanning so far, where he's produced several really, really good quarterback. Well, I shouldn't say produced. He's taken guys via the transfer portal and made them into the best versions of themselves. So I think he could do that with Dante Moore, but I have to see it to believe it, quite frankly. And outside of Makai Hughes, I don't know who is going to be the X factor on this offense. Defensively, I feel like Oregon has been really good in the regular season. Obviously struggled against Ohio State last year and Penn State, for that matter, in the conference championship game. But I think they are really good defensively, especially in the Big Ten. I do expect them to have a really good season, but the quarterback is holding them back for me from putting them any higher than number 9. Number 10. This is where I have Miami. I was very high on Miami last year, and I think that was proven to be accurate. They could not get it done down the stretch. They lost to Syracuse, they lost to Iowa State, they lost to Georgia Tech. Really just fell apart in the last month or so of the season. But I really think that Carson Beck is getting way overhated and way underrated as a result. I do believe that Carson Beck is going to step in and have a monster season with the Hurricanes. I do think they're still going to be an elite offense. They might not be the best in the country like they were last year, but like if they still put up damn near 40 points a game, that wouldn't shock me at all. They lose pretty much everybody. I mean, their top three receivers, maybe even their top four receivers are gone. Their number one tight end's gone. Their number one running back is gone. It's going to look really different in terms of the playmakers, but I think, the result is still going to be pretty much the same. The question is, it doesn't matter how good they are offensively. Their defense lost them multiple games last year that kept them out of the playoffs. So if their defense does not get better, and it should, they have talented players. It's just the coaching and the mentality. Maybe I don't know what it is, but they have to get better defensively because they can't get much worse. Also, look into the run game here of Miami. Noah Lyle stepping in here. Does Mark Fletcher did he also return? I'm not sure if he's back or not, but Noah Lyle I think could turn this offense, kind of take it up a notch, if you will, with Carson Beck leading the way at the quarterback spot. Number 11. This is where I have South Carolina. So tough to rank South Carolina because they had some really great performances and great wins last year, but they did go 9-4. And outside of Lenora Sellers, I'm just not really confident in this offense. They lose Rocket Sanders, he goes to the NFL. And in terms of replacing him, who's the second best player on this offense? You're probably hoping it's a guy like Nick Harbor, but it's like he's all potential, no production. So I really think it's going to be a lot of games next year where it's like Lenora Sellers and just pretty much backpacking the team to a close, grinded out type of victory. They had some stars last year on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe their biggest star returns in Dylan Stewart, the monster pass rusher. So could they win a lot of games via the run game and just shutting teams down defensively? I think so. I think they're a really good team, but it's like in the SEC, I just don't know. I just don't know how it's going to look. I think they're going to have some really shockingly bad performances along with some surprising wins as well. So I have them at number 11, a really tough team to rank there. Number 12, this is where I have Kansas State. Obviously, they're playing today when you're watching this video. Well, unless you're watching it days later, like a weirdo. But they play Iowa State today, and the main storyline here is Avery Johnson returning and possibly Kansas State having the best offense in the Big 12. They have stars on all three levels. Jace Brown, the receiver, returns. DJ Giddens, the running back, returns. And then Avery Johnson, the quarterback. He could have a sneaky Heisman level season here in the Big 12. And, defensively, they're not anything to write home about. But this is a good point, I think, to kind of give my winners, in my opinion, for all of the Power Four conferences. I have, in the SEC, I have Texas. In the Big 10, I have Ohio State. In the ACC, I have Clemson. And I do have Kansas State beating Iowa State today and winning the Big 12 overall. It's really a crapshoot, honestly. It's like, here's the thing, because Arizona State won it last year, and they were literally last in the odds. So it's like, there is no case to be made against anybody winning the Big 12 this year. It is wide the fuck open. So Kansas State is my pick because they just have the most things going for them, in my opinion. But it is honestly a crapshoot in the Big 12 right now. Number 13 is where I have Texas A&M. It's weird, right? It's like Texas A&M consistently does nothing, but still gets ranked in the top 15. And it's like I don't know why. It's like you're asking me. It's like, I mean, I like the addition of Kevin Concepcion in the transfer portal. They get Le'Veon Moss back from injury, rather. I like what Marcel Reed did at times. He obviously has to improve as a passer, but I do think A&M is just good enough. The question is, right, are they good enough to beat the Bamas and the Georgias and the Texases but that's the thing. I don't even think they play Bama or Georgia. They play who are some of the games they played? They played South Carolina last year. They played Missouri. They play Texas, of course. I don't think they play too many like of the top tier SEC teams. They don't even have to be that good, really. I just expect them to take a small step forward. I think they have a pretty solid roster. I like Mike Elko as a coach. I like what he does for the defense. You could put Texas A&M honestly anywhere between like 12 and 25, and I could understand it, quite frankly. Number I said that again. Number 14 is where I have Ole Miss. This is kind of a hot take of mine, but I really just trust what Lane Kiffin has built at Ole Miss. I kind of feel like they have a really high floor there. They do have a new starting quarterback in Austin Simmons. They had a listen. Last year was so obviously the year for Ole Miss, but they just blew it with some terrible losses to Kentucky and Florida. They had so many star players on offense and defense. They put together what how many defensive guys they put together. I know they had three in the top 50 between Amon Allen, Amos, Walter Nolan. Like they had some studs on defense. They put Chris Paul Jr. as well. They had multiple guys at all levels go to the NFL last season. So they lose a bunch of star players, but they were just if they come back not 85% of what they were last year talent wise, they're absolutely a top 15 team. They were one of the best defenses. It's a very similar thing in Texas. When you think of Ole Miss, you think of Texas, you probably think of the offense. They both were dominant defenses last year in the SEC, and it's just like I still like the receiving core as well. They bring in the guy from Penn State, Harrison Wallace. Caden Lee returns to be their wide receiver one. Logan Diggs is their RB1. It's like I really like Ole Miss, and I do think that Lane Kiffin is going to have any quarterback playing at a high level. Um, I like Ole Miss. I think they're going to be really good. I have them at 14. Number 15, another hot take for me. I have Oklahoma here. Listen, Oklahoma probably has the worst record of any team on here that I have in my top 30, but I do think they're going to be the most improved. You bring in a massive upgrade on paper at the quarterback position, and John Mateer. He lit the country on fire at Washington State last season. And they had so many players hurt. It's like if you take like their week 9 roster last year and compare it to now, it is completely unrecognizable. They're going to get so many players back from injury. Their defense has been playing at a really high level under Brent Venables, and I just think if they get a good version, not even the best version, if they get a good version of John Mateer, I think Oklahoma they're going to beat Michigan in week 2, and I think they're going to have a really surprising 8, maybe a 9-win season next year. And by the way, really tough schedule for Oklahoma in the SEC. So it's like they don't get a whole lot of breaks either. Play Tennessee, play Alabama, play Ole Miss, I believe. So it's like they have some real tough games next year. Number 16, I have Michigan right here. I just feel like a lot of people are kind of overrating Michigan here. I just listen, it's so weird, right? Because Michigan had possibly the best back-to-back wins ever. They beat the national champion, Ohio State, in the rivalry game, and then they won a bowl game against Alabama. They did that in back-to-back weeks. So it's like you can't call the season bad just based off 2 games right there. Like it's ridiculous. But besides that, they were genuinely awful. They were 6-5. Besides those 2 games, they lost some terrible games. Their offense was incompetent. Getting a freshman quarterback does not change that. And oh, by the way, they lost their 4 best players, 3 of them on defense. I just Michigan is absolutely still in their rebuild. They might win a game or 2 more than last season, but I do not think getting Bryce Underwood fixes all their problems from last year, and he certainly does not replace Colson Loveland, uh, Mason Graham, what's the guy's name? The other defensive tackle, you know what I'm talking about, and then Will Johnson. So Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson. He does not replace all of those guys. So I am low on Michigan compared to some other people. Number 17 is where I have SMU. I think they are going to be still an explosive offense. They were really good last year, caught the country by storm, really went on a massive run after losing to BYU in like week 2 or week 3, I think. And if Kevin Jennings can take a step forward, I really do think SMU is going to maintain. They won back-to-back 11-win seasons, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win another 10 games this year. Really good defense as well for the ACC standard. So watch out for SMU. I think a lot of people are just writing them off, but I mean they bring back their coach, they bring back their quarterback. They really there's no reason to not include SMU in your top 20 here. Indiana I have at 18. They were a team where I kind of did write them off just because they lost their quarterback and things like that, but they were like the second best offense in the country last year. And I don't think that was all just because of Curtis Rourke, no disrespect, but I think it was more so because of the system. They bring in Fernando Mendoza from Cal. I have no idea how he's going to look in the Indiana offense, but they were really good defense as well for the Big Ten standards. And I mean, just for the whole country standards, actually. Strong pass game. I think I started off with Indiana at like my like mid 20s, but I bumped them up here later on as I was editing this. So Indiana comes in at 18 for me. I obviously don't think they're going to win 10 games again, but it's like I could absolutely see Indiana pulling off a 9-win season, 9-3 regular season here in the Big Ten. Next up, I have Arizona State here, and this is just three straight Big 12 teams. I feel pretty similarly about all of them. Arizona State here, there's just no way you can replace Cam Scadaboo. Sam Levitt is getting a lot of hype entering his second season in Arizona State, but it's pretty much just him and Jordan Tyson. There's not an area on this team besides those two that makes me excited, really. I think their defense is going to lose them a couple games. They do bring in the transfer running back from Army, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Udo, or was that Navy? Army or Navy? I forgot where he played, but they bring him as a transfer running back. They should still be really good offensively, but it's just like I do not think Arizona State is going to repeat what they did last season. Iowa State at 20. Rocco Beck returns, coach returns. I really like their running back duo. I believe it's like Carson Hansen and Abu Sama, but defensively, don't love them. And they lose their top two receivers, which is what made this offense so dangerous, in my opinion. So I think they're going to have to kind of transform into a more of a run first team, in my opinion. But yeah, I have Iowa State down there at number 20. 21, I have Texas Tech. They kind of are everybody's dark horse team this year because they made a ton of moves in the transfer portal. They also bring back their quarterback, Bretton Morton. Their defense is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So Texas Tech is pretty much going to be in a shootout every single week. It's going to be really exciting. They'll win some games that they're not favored to win, but I do not expect them to be some sort of a 10, 11 win sneaky playoff team at all. I see them going 8-4, maybe 9-3 in the regular season. Number 22, I have Duke. I'm really high on Duke, and nobody's talking about it. Duke is an elite ACC defense, but their offense was terrible last year, in part because Malik Murphy looked lost and confused out there. Darian Mensah was a freshman quarterback last year at Tulane. He had some massive games, some huge performances, and Duke landing him it's huge because he's going to be the starter for like the next 2 years if things work out, and he could just take this whole offense to another level. Not enough people are talking about Duke overall. This pickup, and I mean between Duke, Miami, Clemson, SMU, I think the ACC is going to be really interesting. That's four teams right there who I all could see winning 10 games in the regular season. So keep an eye on Duke, man. I'm really interested. Their defense definitely gives them an edge over some of these other teams. Number 23 out of Florida. It's so weird, right? Because they were terrible, absolutely terrible the first half of the year. The last four games give them a lot of hope. They beat LSU, I think. They beat Ole Miss. They had some really good wins in there. But it's just like, I'm not high on DJ Lagway. I got to see more. I'm just not ready to crown him or Arch Manning for that matter as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I just think they have issues that run a little bit deeper than just the quarterback position. So it's like, I'm optimistic. I have them at number 23. They weren't even close to being ranked last year. So, it's a start, but I definitely would not have Florida rather, sniffing my top 20. Illinois, Illinois is a team that I had way higher just because I see where other people are ranking them. But the more research I did, it's like I dropped them heavy in the rankings here. They won 10 games last year. It's very impressive. However, they pretty much lose all of the offensive pieces that made that happen, in my opinion. They lose their top two running backs, lose their top two receivers. Luke Altmaier returns, but the thing is, I just don't think he's a really good quarterback. Every time I watched the Illinois game last year, it's like I never stopped and think, oh man, they got a real good quarterback there, Luke Altmaier. So I don't think he's much of a difference maker. The offense overall, I think, is going to be not very impressive next year. And they're good defensively. They've been really good defensively over the years, but it's like they need to have one of the elite defenses in the country if they want to win 9 or 10 games next year. So I do see Illinois taking a step back, maybe at 8 if they're lucky, a 9-win team next year. Number 25, I have Georgia Tech here. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people. I think Georgia Tech's in line for a pop year. It just feels like they're kind of building to something. And with this being Haynes King final year, I think this could be the year, right? They have a real difficult offense to defend between Jamal Haynes, Haynes King. Who is the transfer receiver they brought in? They brought in a big name transfer guy. I'm blanking on his name. They brought someone in. They lost Eric Singleton. They brought in a guy to replace him. And I just think Georgia Tech's going to have they're going to be a real tough out. They could beat anybody in the ACC theoretically. So keep an eye on Georgia Tech. Louisville, I have a 26 here. 9 games last year. Here's the thing. Not a lot of people are talking about it. I think Louisville might have upgraded at quarterback. I know Tyler Shuck went number 40 overall to the Saints. He should have went 140, but he should have went 240, quite frankly. But I think bringing in this Miller Moss guy from USC, obviously there's a if Lane Kiffin, my bad, if Lane Kiffin can't turn you into a good quarterback, then you should be probably really concerned about this guy's potential overall. But I think he could still have a really good year. Uh, 1 second here. My apologies. I had to go get a charger for my computer. Now, where were we? Okay. So, back to Louisville, who I have as my number 2016. I do believe that potentially make them a more capable pass game. I don't think anybody was really all that impressed with Tyler Shuck besides the Saints for some reason. I also think Isaac Brown, keep an eye on this guy every single time. I watched a Louisville game last season. I was amazed with Isaac Brown. This guy runs like a maniac, and he could be one of the most impressive breakout players. He's a true sophomore, I think, too. So he's like 19 years old. The guy's a freak. Watch out for him. But I do think Louisville's defense is nothing to write home about, and it could lose them a game or two that they otherwise would have won if their defense was a little bit better. So keep an eye on that. Moving on to Tennessee. You know, it's weird, right? Because let me put it like this. I think Tennessee is a team who could potentially jump up these rankings depending on how good Joey Aguilar looks. Here's the problem, right? It's like if he would have just been there since the start of like if he would have got there in like January, for example, I would have been so much more confident in Tennessee and him as a whole. But it's like, obviously, this was not their plan. This was not what they wanted. This was kind of thrown at them out of nowhere. And they're obviously not feeling too great about him being their new starting quarterback, but it is what it is, right? But the crazy thing is, it could be an upgrade, possibly. Nico had some stinky performances last year. And quite frankly, I got to stop saying that. But if their defense could be as good as it was last year and they find out some sort of a way to replace the production that Dylan Sampson gave them, keep in mind, guys, the strength of Tennessee these last 2 years has not been their pass game or their quarterback. It's been their run game and their defense. So having Joey Aguilar in there doesn't necessarily change things too much, but just I can't put Tennessee in my top 25. I have no idea what they're going to look like. But like I said, they could potentially shoot up these rankings depending on how they play. Number 28 is where I have Army. I had to put a couple, well, is this the first G5 team I have? I think this is the only G5 team I have in my entire rankings. And kind of makes sense. They were one of, if not the best in the country last year, besides maybe Boise State. Honorable mention to them, by the way. But Army went 12-2 last year, pretty much dominated the AAC. They pretty much perfected their style. I mean, they played some really good defense, or great defense even. The problem here is that they got to replace Bryson Daly. The quarterback there, and listen, he's not really much of a quarterback, but he had like 15 passing touchdowns. He had like 40 overall in the year. He was kind of a beast last year. If he came back, I might even have Army in like my top 20. But unfortunately, they got to replace him. Who knows what they're going to look like? They also lost their running back to Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken. So they got to have some roster turnover here. But if their coach kind of just keeps it going last year, I find it hard to believe that Army can't win 10 games again next year, possibly. So we'll see what happens there. Number 29, I have TCU. I just have a lot of confidence in this quarterback, Josh Hoover. They have an air raid style offense. I think they're going to get into some absolute shootouts next year, similar to Texas Tech. Both of those teams have terrible defenses, but that's why I have Texas Tech much higher than TCU. But I think TCU is going to knock off a couple of these teams in the Big 12, but I don't have much confidence in them at all to, win, 10 games or anything. But they won 9 games last year, but I do think they get worse because they lose two of their best players in Jack Bech and Savion Williams. Number 30, this is where I have Colorado. Listen, some people might laugh when they see this because they're replacing Travis Hunter and they're replacing Shedeur Sanders, and you really can't replace those guys. But here's the thing. if you just look at the trends from year one to year two under Deion Sanders, their defense got ridiculously better. Like, and their defense looked dominant at times last year. Let me actually pull it up because I don't want to just be talking out my ass. I want to actually show you the proof. Also, their offensive line got slightly better. They still don't have a run game, which I think is going to change this year because they have a quarterback who is going to give them something in that area, which they did not have previously with Shedeur Sanders. Caden Salter, he comes over from Liberty, and he does have some juice in his legs, and he could provide them with something that they've been missing beforehand. Now, they can't replace Travis Hunter. Their wide receiver core, it was really good last year, man. Will Shepard, Jimmy Horn, LeJontay Wester, Travis Hunter, they had a real good group of receivers. I'm interested in a couple guys they have right now, but I can't say for sure if any of them will be stars like what we saw previously. But let me quickly point out what I think about this defense here. So last year, right, if I can go over to the right tab right here, schedule results. Let me just point out some of the games where they just shut down opposing teams' offenses. Uh, let me see. Against Arizona, with Tetairoa McMillan, Noah Fafita, held them to 7 points. Against Oklahoma State, held them to 0 points. These are both conference games. UCF at the time was looking like a real dominant offense, held them to 21 points. Utah held them to 24. That's actually not very impressive, but it's like they had several games last year where you look at it and you're like, damn, that Colorado defense is playing really well. I think they're going to have more of those games. They only had 1, 2, 3 games. If they had 4 games, they allowed over 30. The most points they allowed was 37. They're like the Colorado defense. I'm trying to point that out to you because some people, when they talk about Colorado, they have no run game. Their offensive line's terrible. Their defense is terrible. Their defense was actually above average last year, quite frankly. So that's what I have to say about Colorado. And here's the thing. They have been ranked deservingly so. Okay, maybe not deservingly so in 2023, but I mean, not they beat TCU. They have been ranked in the top 25 each of these last 2 years. They, in the middle of November last year, they were ranked 16, and they earned that ranking. They absolutely did. They won. They were on a 4-game win streak. They won 7 out of 8. Yeah, I think Colorado, especially in the Big 12 where anything can happen, deserves a spot in my top 30. So that's going to, well, actually, let's talk about some honorable mentions as well. These are the teams that decided to not include Syracuse, Nebraska, Navy, Memphis, Missouri, BYU, Baylor, Washington, Wisconsin, Boise State, and Vanderbilt. So these are kind of, how many teams is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10? Yeah. These are the next 10 up. I would find it extremely hard to believe anybody not in this top 40 cracking the rankings within the next month. Like it would take like a 5-0 start from some surprise team or a massive upset for me to include somebody not mentioned here jumping into the top 30. So keep that in mind. You're going to see some sort of a mix of these 40 teams for the next month at least. So can't wait to see how wrong I am. That's kind of the beauty in these things. I like the change more so than actually trying to predict things correctly here. So that's going to be for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see all of y'all in the next one. Peace.